What's up? I'm Ashley, and in this video, I'm going to give you a bunch of book recommendations for romantasy books with the enemies to lovers trope. It is one of my personal favorites. Romantasy is my favorite subgenre, so keep on watching if you want to get a recommendation for your next favorite romantasy. Before I get started, do me a favor and click that subscribe button. If you could do that, it would mean the absolute world to me. It will help me know to continue making videos like this one. All right, a little note about enemies to lovers fantasy romance books. I have 2 more videos like this on my channel, recommendations with really amazing fantasy romance books with the enemies to lovers trope, because this is my favorite trope. Now, what I will say is I do feel like the trope is getting overdone. The market is getting really saturated with enemies to lovers in general, both in contemporary romance and other types of genres, as well as fantasy romance. And so a video like this one is really important in helping you figure out what book you want to pick up, because we don't have time to read 100 books a year to find our favorite. So what I'm going to try to do is describe the book as much as I can and also give you some of my thoughts on pick this up if you are looking for XYZ, etc. What I will say is I'm actually finding myself a little bored with some of the fantasy romance enemies to lovers books. I feel like they can get really repetitive. They repeat some of the same kind of setups, some of the same plot points, and some of the same twists. The books I have to talk to you about today, though, are the best ones that I have personally read recently. Without further ado, let's get started. The first recommendation is book 1 in what I think is going to be a trilogy. Book 1 is called A Crown of Oaths and Curses, and this book is by J. Bree. You might remember J. Bree because she wrote a Why Choose romance book, romance series, that was very big bestseller on Amazon. I didn't personally read that one because I'm not a fan of reverse harem or Why Choose. However, I did pick up A Crown of Oaths and Curses and book 2, which is already out now, A Throne of Honor and Blood, or is it Blood and Honor? There was actually a huge controversy about A Throne of Blood and Honor, and that was because the title contained within it a Nazi slogan, or a neo-Nazi group's slogan, so they had to do a reprint. The book was a little bit later. I do think that caused some issues with the book and with its publication. But let me talk about the first book and mention to you that there are 2 prequel novellas, which are both excellent, The Scepter and the Sword. Yes, please start with the prequel novellas. Prequel novellas and novellas in general are great for knocking off that book count, getting you to your goal of reading however many books because they're short, quick reads. These 2 novellas set up the series perfectly. In this series, we have Rook, who is an amazingly well-written character. If you are looking for a book that has a female main character where the female is incredibly talented and quietly confident, not really extroverted and stabby like we see in a lot of other books. Like if you look at the heroines in Sarah J. Maas's books, for example, recently in the Crescent City series, you have Bryce, and she's very exuberant and in your face, and everybody falls in love with her, and she's just this amazing, charming, out there person. And we look at, say, someone like Feyre, who's like half naked in front of Rhysand all the time. Those are very strong, outward, extroverted, taking up a lot of space type female main characters. And what is unique about Crown of Oaths and Curses is Rook, who is our main character, is very quietly confident and quietly powerful. She's powerful without being in your face, and I really like the way she's developed. It's a bit different, and that aspect appealed to me. She is a witch, and her entire coven is slaughtered except for her brother. She then goes to have her fate revealed, and her fate is that she's going to marry someone from the Fae, and the Fae are the enemies of the witches. In fact, a faction of the witches led by somewhat of a tyrannical evil witch named Carl is at war against the Fae. So she finds out she's going to be mated with the Fae prince. She's like I can't do this. And she runs away to another realm and joins the army there. 200 years later, she comes back to finally face her fate. And she is now a hardened warrior. And the Prince of the Fae has been awaiting his mate for many, many years. He can't wait to see her. He goes to meet her and finds out she is a witch. Basically, a member of his greatest enemy, you know, the classic enemies to lovers trope happening right now in the story. And what is interesting and well done about this is that there's a real reason for them to actually be enemies, for them to hate each other. I don't want any of this slight miscommunication. So and so said something about so and so's mother 10 years ago. No, there's a real reason for there to be vitriol between them. Actual good reasons, not just like, oh, I misunderstood you. No, don't give me any of that miscommunication trope. I'm not in the mood for it. It's way overdone and it's like lazy writing. I'm sorry, it is. The story develops from there. Like I said, book 1 and 2 are out now. I will warn you about book 2. The ending is somewhat controversial and, in the opinion of many, not well done. I think that the author could do better. And I think that in book 3, we'll see a little bit of a reversal of some of the things that happen in book 2. Next recommendation is from one of my favorite contemporary romance authors, none other than the Queen, Ali Hazelwood. She wrote Bride as her first foray into fantasy romance, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Pick it up if you're looking for a very quick and easy read. If you're looking for a book that's going to be a little bit on the more lighthearted side, it's going to make you chuckle. In this book, we've got our main character, Misery, who is the daughter of vampires, or of vampire leadership, right? It takes an urban fantasy, so it takes place, excuse me, little nose itch. You know, when you have a nose itch and you can't help but scratch it. It has to be scratched. It just has to be. So in this book, we've got basically the world as it is today. However, there are vampires and also werewolves. And the daughter of one of the vampire politicians, Misery, is our main character, in order to try to create peace and better relations between the vampires and the werewolves, who have typically been at war and in conflict. Misery is being wed to like an alpha or head of the werewolves, and that's where the book takes place. There's also a little bit of a mystery in here because Misery's best friend has disappeared, and the reason why she accepts this political marriage of convenience has to do with her wanting to get more information about her missing friend. Now, the previous recommendation, Crown of Oaths and Curses and Bride, they're kind of mild on the spice. What I will tell you about Bride is that it does dip a bit into the Omegaverse, so you're going to get things like nodding. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, you got to look up videos about Omegaverse because that's a whole other topic. But it's Omegaverse light, okay? It's really, you don't have to be a fan of the Omegaverse in order to enjoy and read this book. Like I said, it's fast-paced. It's a quick read. I read it, like, I think in 1 or 2 sittings. And if you're a fan of Ali Hazelwood, I definitely recommend that you check this one out. Now, let's get a spicy book recommendation because we know that many of us are reading fantasy romance partly for the smut. The next book I want to talk to you about is called What Lies Beyond the Veil, and this is as spicy as any fantasy romance that still has a plot can get. We have our main character, Estrella, and if you like From Blood and Ash, Estrella is very much like Poppy, who's the main character in From Blood and Ash. She's sort of ignorant of who her surroundings and who she really is, etc., etc. She is in a situation where she's about to be sacrificed by the ruler in her area, and in that moment where she's about to be sacrificed, this veil that separates the human world from the fae world comes down, and that's where our story begins. If you like fated mates, if you want to see spice, I mean a lot of it, this is the book for you. It is very much a slow at the beginning, gets much better and more fast-paced. I went through book 1. Once it started to pick up, I went through it really quickly. I went right on to the next book. It is a very easy read. It's not like this brilliantly written book, but it is very entertaining. Like I said, focuses more on the relationship and on the spice. It's less about the development of the world and more about the interpersonal relationships between the characters. Now we're gonna switch to more of on a YA, new A, YA, new A, YA hybrid. So we're getting more into like the young adult, less spicy territory, but incredibly entertaining completed duology, which starts with book one, These Hollow Vows. Now, in this book, you're basically getting every single trope you could possibly want, including enemies to lovers. You're getting kind of a mashup of like Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast. You're getting a sprinkling of the Cruel Prince series, a sprinkling of the Hunger Games, a sprinkling of what's the series called? The Selection, where you have to compete to be the prince's chosen one. In this book, our main character is kind of living like a Cinderella type lifestyle. Her sister is sold to this evil fae king, so she's gone into that world and she's trying to get to the point where she can or where she is competing for to be the bride or partner of the prince. While she's there, she kind of also falls in with this other set of fae, and we get a love triangle. If you like the love triangle trope, this is definitely one for you. Like I said, this is a fast-paced, entertaining book. It is not heavy on the spice, but it is a completed duology. And there is another book set in this world that just recently released by this author. So if you like it, you can read 2 more books right after you finish this one. And our next book is a little bit different in that I found that it didn't take place in the same with the same kind of world building points and beats that some of the other more popular books have. And this book is called Divine Rivals. It's by Rebecca Ross. It's a completed duology. So book 2 is Ruthless Vows. And in this book, or in this world, it's very much like almost like quasi Greek gods, but they're not quite the Greek gods. They're different gods, and they have different kind of powers and conflict, and they interact closely with their human population. And there is a war between the gods, and the gods can kind of call people to fight on their side. Now, our main characters are rival journalists at a newspaper. One of them ends up going to the front in search of her brother. The other one follows them. And what connects them is this magical enchanted typewriter where they write letters to one another without knowing who the other is. And the letters are immediately transported to the other person. So you kind of get these different layers to the story. It is incredibly romantic. I like the kind of World War I setting and that time period of modern history, that level of technology that you have in these books. It's a very interesting take on the fantasy romance. Rebecca Ross does a terrific job developing the characters and also keeping the plot moving and keeping you interested in what's going on with them. So I would say this one is perfect for someone who's tired of these same kind of settings that we see in these other books. There's no vampires, there's no werewolves, there's no fae. This is, an enchanted typewriter, some gods, very similar to the Greek gods. If that sounds up your alley, definitely consider picking this one up. All right, the last book I want to talk to you about is a series that I've seen going around on BookTube, Book Talk, and Bookstagram. And I think you should pick this one up if you really want to sink in to a lot of thick books, if you want to have a lot to read. And that is book 1 is called Spark of the Everflame, and it's called The Kindred's Curse Saga. It is some pretty thick books. I'll put some pictures up on the screen so you can see. And this is heavy in the fantasy, heavy on the world building, a lot of political intrigue, a lot of conflict, set in an alternative world where our main character is the daughter of a healer. She believes she has an affliction, so she is constantly taking this kind of medicine to kind of keep that affliction at bay. She lives in a world that is incredibly unequal. There are these half godlike creatures that control everything, and the humans are really relegated into a ghetto and into a lower position within the social hierarchy quite unfairly. Our main character, her mother disappears. She stops taking this medication, and what she finds out is that she actually has powers and is chosen to be the next queen. There is a catch though. She has to eventually compete and prove herself to get this crown. and the story goes from there. We have a great enemies to lovers, slight love triangle, a bit of a different angle on the fantasy romance, because it's sort of unique. I haven't really seen this kind of take on it. There's a lot of different worlds within this world, and that part is quite interesting. You do sort of have these half godlike creatures, which are basically like fae, but they don't have wings or some of like the pointy-eared features that the other fae do. I really fell in love with this main character, and some of the side characters in this series are absolutely fabulous. So if you're looking to get, you want a lot of content, you want a lot of books, a series that you can really have a lot to read about, then this is the one for you. That's the Kindred Curse Saga, and it is by Penn Cole. I would recommend that you pick this one up if you're really looking for a longer, heavier on the fantasy elements type series. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to this part of the video, leave me a shooting star emoji and tell me what your favorite trope is in books to read. Is it enemies to lovers? Is it forced proximity? Is it, I don't know, unexpected pregnancy? Is it single dad? Is it he falls first? Put it down in the comments and let me know if you have any book recommendations to go with your favorite trope. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got some recommendations of books you want to read. If you did, give this video a thumbs up, hit that like button, and if you could, please consider subscribing to my channel. It would mean the absolute world to me. In the meantime, I wish you happy reading, and this is Ashley saying goodbye.